Welcome to Business Talk. I am Deepak, your host for today's insightful episode. I am delighted to welcome Professor Varsha Jain, a renowned scholar and HGK Chair Professor of Marketing at MICA, India, as our distinguished guest on today's podcast episode. Professor Jain brings over 23 years of teaching and research experience with a portfolio of 180 plus publications in top international and national and trade journals, book chapters, and case studies. Her research has appeared in top-tier journals, including the European Journal of Marketing, International Journal of Information Management, Journal of Business Research, Journal of Product and Brand Management, and Journal of Consumer Marketing, among others, ABDC A Star and A category. She has contributed cases to Ivey Publishing and Emerald Emerging Market Case Collection and chapters in major marketing textbooks by Dr. Philip Kotler and Dr. Paul Baines by invitation. Professor Jain has received over 28 national and international accolades for her academic contributions. The most recent is the Research Award Professor Springer Nature India 2025, 2024 Best Paper Award for a special session held at Winter AMA 2024 at AMA International Annual Conference, USA. 2024 the Best Methodology Paper Award at Newcastle University, along with Lancaster University Management School and Brunel University, UK, at Marketing Strategy and Policy Conference, UK, and Best Paper Runner-Up Award for a special session held at Winter AMA 2023 at AMA Annual Conference, USA. In her global research career, she is visiting guest at Emory Business School, Michigan State University, University of Washington, a visiting scholar at Greenwich University, London, and the Medill School, Northwestern University. She is a deputy editor with Journal of Consumer Behavior, associate editor with Psychology and Marketing, Journal of Consumer Marketing, and Australian Marketing Journal. Her research interests including digital marketing, luxury branding, and digital native consumer behavior. In this episode, Professor Varsha Jain shares valuable insights from her research-focused book, Qualitative Research for a Digital World. So without further delay, let's welcome Professor Varsha Jain to the podcast. Professor Jain, thank you for joining us today and for graciously accepting our invitation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a delight to be part of the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor, what inspired you to write this book and why is there a growing need to adapt qualitative research method for the digital world?
Sure. I think this need of the book started when I was teaching the PhD program and the master's program at different parts of the world, including India, and London and France and US and all over the world when I teach. I felt that it was a journey of 12 years, honestly. So we kept writing and we kept iterating. So I was teaching, improvising the book, and trying to make sense so that students can actually use that. So that was something which I wanted to share as an author because it's not like 1 year or 2 years you can actually come up with a comprehensive book. It takes a while. So the journey started when I started teaching this particular course at MICA. I realized that starting from conceptualization, then research paradigms, then ethics, and then methods and analysis, and how do I write, how do I manage my data for everything which I just listed. I had to refer to different set of papers, different set of books because I could not find anything comprehensively written in one particular book or the paper. And students were finding it very difficult. And I would say the credit goes to all my students. They inspired me that, ma'am, would you please come up with a book because this is very tedious to scan all over the place and then learn about it. So that was one aspect of writing the book. The second part was when I was teaching, it is always very important, even as a student. I mean, I'm still a student because we are all learning in the AI world. As I talk, technology improvises. So while I was doing the sessions and teaching the students and making them aware about the qualitative research, I have an approach which says that when I have to mention a particular method or a concept, right, in qualitative research also, I give them a lot of tasks like activities. Okay, coming from a real-time problem, because I myself do a lot of research, and that helps me to bring back to the classroom, and I give them a lot of ideas. For example, I tell them, okay, there is an AI where you have to use that in order to improvise the healthcare system. So, how would you do that? Come up with a research question, then explain and why this question it will be qualified to do a qualitative research. So we do a lot of discussions and then explain them the steps. So the second point which I'm raising for the book is it has a lot of real time issues, problems coming from business, society, as well as communities. Because this book is about social scientists. We all are social scientists, which means that management and marketing becomes part of it. And it gives you a lot of ideas about the opening cases, discussion cases. So it's primarily for media scholars, marketing scholars, social scientists who wants to understand, qualitative research. And the third part of the book, why this book, is coming from the publisher, Sage. And it was like a seamless journey with Sage. I would really, appreciate the kind of efforts they put in, because they said that, Varsha, there are a lot of books which are about methods. There are books about marketing because my background is marketing. But they said that could you just open it up for interdisciplinary kind of a work so that everybody can use it. And I think it makes a lot of sense because it is the methods, and especially the qualitative methods, are not only for management and marketing scholars, but they are being used widely by, say, people who are doing research in journalism, in media, and other parts of the discipline, sociology, psychology. Everybody has to do qualitative research because they have to understand human being, and we all are so complex. So you cannot run quantitative studies and understand the human behavior. So I think they guided us very nicely that this is the holistic view which you should present in the book. And the second point which they listed was that it should be about the digital world, because there are a lot of books which are already been written about different methods, different conceptualization in the traditional way. But how do you do it in the digital world? For example, the book talks about how do you take online interviews. So we explain, we start with learning objective, how the steps would be there, how would you start with first particular aspect of online interview, then the second process of it, how do you even do the sampling, and everything has been there in one screenshot which you would see in the chapters. So I think that is very helpful with the examples. As I said, examples are the landmark. Still, we remember all the concepts through the examples. And examples we have taken from all over the world. So we have included all the industries, which includes wellness, fitness, pharmaceutical industries, then, this sports industries, everything, political examples also you would see, because how would you assess a political leader or a party? You have to do a qualitative research. We have examples from that particular discipline as well. And then we have also curated examples from different markets. For example, India, Australia, Vietnam, UK, US, France, everywhere. So it becomes very inclusive book, because any part of the world, if somebody is using, it is very relatable and it's very easy read, right? Because it has got a lot of toolkits, it has got a lot of questions, it has got a lot of mini cases coming from the real time issues that people are facing. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And the last point I would add as an editor is that we need a lot of mixed methods. And this is something which we always say, because if you use one particular method, you are not addressing the research question and the problem. The reason is that because in this AI world, everything has become very complex. So if you use one particular methodology to address that problem, which I was mentioning about AI and healthcare also, there could be another thing coming from how you use your avatars for online shopping, for instance. Now, those areas cannot be addressed by one method. So I think mixed methods are needed, and qualitative research actually gives you a lot of understanding about the process, how it needs to be done, why it is happening, and or the entire model can be established, and then quantitative research can be done by the scholars. So I think that was the whole journey of the book. It took a while to explain that because it took a while for me to come up with this book, but I really feel I've written a lot of books, but this book is very close to my heart because it evolved through my students. It evolved through my teaching. It evolved through my experience, which I had as a researcher. So I really feel that this is something which is very close to my heart, and I really invested a lot of time, and all credit to my co-authors as well, who have worked with me, Manuel and Himani. Himani was my actually student, PhD student at MICA. So it's really a delight moment to co-author all of that with them. So that was about the book.
Very insightful. Professor, how do you define digital fluency in the context of qualitative research and why it is essential for today's researchers?
Sure. I think digital fluency is very important, and you raise a very important area of discussion. And that is where Sage came up with their propositions of writing this particular book in the digital context. The reason is that if you look at ourselves, let's start with our own entity, okay? We are in the physical space, but we are also on digital space, right? I don't think anybody in the world doesn't have a digital footprint. Everybody has a digital footprint. It could be on Instagram, it could be on Facebook, it could be on Snapchat, depending on the generations, right? But so the whole idea is when there are digital footprints, when people are going online, and this was something which we discussed at Northwestern when I was a visiting scholar there, and 12 years ago. That human beings and consumers would care a lot on the digital footprints rather than their physical entity, and which is what is evolving now. So if the digital footprints are so important, and if people like us are all over the social media and digital channel, it is utmost important for the businesses, communities, and society to understand how people are reacting, how are they behaving. Suppose if somebody posts about, I am having a dinner at Taj. Now, is that a happy moment or a sad moment? And I'm saying this because everybody has different sort of feelings and they react very differently. So I think it is very important for everybody to understand this space, and even for the businesses to understand how people react and make their life more seamless, because the marketing standpoint says that it is not about overloading a lot of information but making sense and making some meaningful content to the consumers, which is where we say micro segmentation, which is coming from qualitative research, and thus digital fluency and understanding becomes so important to all the stakeholders.
Your book offers step-by-step guides. Can you highlight one methodology or framework that you believe is especially relevant for researchers working in digital environments?
Sure, I think this is very important, and I will there are different methods which we have listed in the book, but I will talk about a very important method, which is what is ethnography. We've been trained for ethnography, right? We do social immersions, we talk to people, we understand their actual behavior. See, in this digital and AI world, what is happening is all respondents and participants, basically, they also know how to behave and act, which may or may not reflect their real behavior. Now, for people like us who are scholars, that is not good because we always want to track the behavior in the natural setting. Now, for that, you need to do qualitative research because after a while, a human cannot act beyond a point, right? Because you have to give your natural behavior and attitude for whatever is being researched. It could be shopping, it could be about the consumption patterns, anything that the scholars are researching on. Now, ethnography is very helpful because you are studying online behavior. For instance, how you post about your fashion, how you are reacting towards the influencers, how you are treating travel as your hobby, and probably coming up with different sorts of content and reacting to different sorts of platform even, and you can do a lot of cross generational work as well. So ethnography helps. So in some of our papers and before this podcast, I did a lot of discussion with my co-authors who are based in India and outside India, where we were discussing that how to develop the model through ethnographical, descriptive, real-time behavioral that you see across the channels. So we did a lot of papers, and they are at different stages where we spoke about, for instance, on Instagram, if somebody post about an influencer post about the fashion or a brand post about the fashion, then what is the reaction of people? Now I can do keyword analysis, I can do the profiling, I can get into understanding of the behavior, and through that I can develop the model. So it's like a pseudo kind of a qualitative research, but the point I'm making is this is how the real-time behavior can be tracked, the models can be developed, and the qualitative research really helps. And ethnography is primarily not about data scrapping. I think most of the people think that it's just data scrapping. You go on Instagram and take the screenshots and all that. No, it's about, first thing is that you have to be very ethical, because anything which is available online, suppose your picture or my picture also, is not public. You have to take permission because there are copyright issues. And once you have the ethical permission in writing or you're recording it, then only you can use those data. So this is very important, and I'm putting it upfront because all the scholars should understand this. The second point on ethnography is that, as I mentioned earlier, it is not descriptive. It is about, if, for example, if you are studying travel and the travel influencers, then in that case, you will also have to interview the influencer and the followers to understand the process around it. That is ethnography. Now, within the book, we have given different types of ethnography. And I always feel that humanistic ethnography is something which is very important because you do a lot of interaction with those people. So you're not just coding, and using NLP while you just do the data scrapping. That is not something where ethnography works. So it is also active and passive. So you actually, do online interviews with those people, do online immersions with those people whom you are studying, and understand their patterns and why they do that. For example, in gamification, we were studying gamers with one of my PhD students, and we were trying to understand their gaming patterns. So this really helps. So this is something which we keep doing it while we are doing the ethnography. And it is very helpful because you don't have to go physically to different sites, and I've done that in the past as well, where you have to invest a lot of time and go to different sites, visit, talk to people, take pictures and all that. Now you can do it. Instagram could be your site, right? Tinder could be your site if you're studying dating apps, for example. So that's very important.
Very interesting. Professor, many researchers struggle with data access in digital spaces. How does your book help readers navigate these complexities of digital access and ethical concerns?
Correct. So I think I spoke about the ethics earlier. But in digital world, as I was mentioning, and it is additional information, which is digital sites are actually developed basis your research area. And as I said, that anything which is available on the digital channels, it could be Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook, is not available for everybody because there are copyright issues. For example, when we publish book papers, or when all this content come to us as well, when we work on the other side as editors, we do not even touch those photographs and pictures and all of that unless and until the authors get the copyright signed form from those people. So you might say that, okay, this is something which I have taken from Instagram, but that is not something which we would accept. That is what I was mentioning. Whenever you start a research or you add yourself, for example, in what I have seen in most of the countries in the world is food is something which is very exciting for everybody. And food keeps changing with culture, right? And subcultures. So food consumption is very interesting to a lot of people. And there are a lot of food bloggers and people you might want to study them. Then in that case, when you are studying food consumption and food blogging and how it is affecting, and there are different categories of people whom you can study. But then within that, what you can do is you can join online groups, but before you join, you will have to mention that you are doing an academic research, and this is what is the whole idea. And I want to join the group for a year or 6 months in order to understand how are the food patterns emerging, for instance, what people are interested in, the cultural nuances of it. So just be clear in terms of what you want to do. This is very important because even for publishing in the journals, we emphasize on the ethical part of it. So this is something which is very important. The second part of your question was about the accessibility of the data. As I mentioned earlier, it's very easy because you don't need a lot of funding to go to a physical site. Suppose while sitting in India, you can actually study the food patterns of France, you can study the food patterns of London, how people are behaving, what people are having. And there is a lot of local kind of food consumption which is emerging. There's a lot of patterns that emerges through different type of cuisines that we see every day. And people want to love to do a lot of innovation in the food because they don't want to eat the same mundane food every day. So then, and of course, after COVID, we are talking about healthy eating and healthy lifestyle. So that also helps. So now the collection of the data is pretty high along across all the channels and the sites. Now, the challenge with the researcher is that you have access to a lot of data, and in qualitative research, we get a lot of data. But how do I make sense of that data? How do I draw interpretations? So when we work in interpretive paradigm, which is what we've written in the book also, because qualitative research is all about how do you draw interpretations through your data and contribute meaningfully to the area of research. I think that is something which is very important. And so the accessibility of the data is high. For instance, one of our PhD students, she used to do a lot of yoga, and Instagram was her site. And she actually did a lot of videos, and she posted a lot of content about yoga and how to do yoga and why yoga is important. And she celebrated all of that, and it was part of her thesis. So the data collection is pretty easy. But the only challenge is when I get the data, how do I draw insights? How do I draw the results and then make sense to the research question? So that is something which the scholars have to learn, which is what we have written in the book. And the beauty of qualitative research is sometimes the research questions comes from your observations and data scrapping and all of that. For example, if you're studying chocolates, everybody loves chocolate. Now, chocolates, various versions, packaging, country of origin, all this can emerge as research questions while you're studying it. So it's pretty organic.
Dr. Jain, could you share an example from the book where a traditional qualitative method was reimagined or innovatively applied in the digital context?
Correct. So, as I was talking about ethnography, this is something which emerged from ethnography. Then, the other example that we have in the book is the online interviews. Interviews have been there forever, right? We use interviews for different disciplines, different sort of research. But online interviews actually worked very well. Even after COVID, there was an exaggeration and overuse of all the online interviews. I myself did a lot of work. For instance, while we were in the COVID and we were struggling, students, faculty, everybody was struggling in the higher education, that how do you deal with that situation? Because we never faced that situation. So during that time, I did a study which was about higher education, and my co-author of the book, Himani, and I actually wrote a lot of papers around it, which was talking about how do this blending works. And the point is, we did online interviews through Zoom, and Zoom has AI companion, so you can actually do the transcription. And one of my co-author, Emmanuel, he also was part of that project. And then we tried to do 4 country studies, because we were trying to address this live issue, that how do you juggle with this technology and ensure that the learning is still happening though we were in crisis. So I think this is the whole idea, where this sort of methods like online interviews, online focus group discussions, all these are helping the researchers and scholars so that you are able to address the problem at the right time. Because if you go in the physical space, it takes a lot of time. We all have done it. I myself have gone to physical sites all over the world to do the interviews, but it takes, believe me, a lot of time. But if you have to do it on Zoom, it's so easy, right? Like you and I are discussing on Zoom, it's so easy. But if you have to go physically to a site, then you're restricting your geographical area. And that is something which I think is a sort of a drawback in the research. So
The
we
book,
listed all of that in the book.
yeah, the book spans all social science disciplines. How
Yeah.
did you ensure that content remains practical and inclusive for both such a broad audience for researchers?
Correct. I think this is very important question that you're raising, because this is exactly what the publisher asked us to do. And they said that this is not only for one particular stream, which is management and marketing, but it is for the social scientists. And that is how Himani played a significant role, because Emmanuel and I have marketing background, right? But Himani comes from a different background, and she brought in a lot of examples from society and communities, real-time issues that people are facing. And Emmanuel and I brought in a lot of examples from real-time businesses. And businesses has to change. They got into mergers, acquisition. There were a lot of takeovers, and a lot of crises happen. And still, every day we are looking into all of that. So I think that was very important while we were working on it, and it is very inclusive in the book, as I mentioned earlier, that we included, issues related to media. So it's not everything is good in this world, right? And as researchers, every concept that you study, every real problem that you solve will have your advantages and disadvantages, right? So for example, I mentioned about political parties, political leaders, and then, country of origin, and then place branding. So everything has got their advantages and disadvantages. So we provided all of that in a very holistic way, so that people can understand and they can relate, and live issues that we were facing as researchers, which we have written in the book. So it makes it very inclusive, and it is not the issues and problems that we were addressing only from a specific country. We were actually addressing issues with higher education, infrastructure, then people who might have some issues in Nigeria, maybe because Emmanuel is originally from Nigeria. So you will get examples from that country as well, from London. People have issues. So how do you address that? Because you have to create societal impact. It's not a mere research, right? You need to create an impact. You need to help people. Okay, if you have issues, then how do I address that? For example, there are a lot of companies now. We have talked about Zomato and Swiggy, for example. Now, the issue that we all have is that we want quick food and really tasty food, so they're solving the problem. But there are a lot of hassles that are coming into the business model. So how you are fixing it? This is also qualitative research. So you would see all of that coming in the book, which makes it very inclusive.
What role do digital platforms like social media, online communities, and digital ethnography play in books' approach to research design?
Correct. So I think this is very important question for the scholars and researchers because this is like a backbone of any research. And even as an editor, I always look into the appendices of the manuscript, which people usually ignore. And the reason is that in that you mention your interview guidelines, in that you mention focus group discussion guidelines and questionnaire, whatever instrument that you have used in order to collect the data. Now, in the book, we are giving real-time examples to say that how do you even develop those questions? How is online interview question different from online focus group discussion? How is ethnography different into different stages which you would be researching on? So I think this is something which is very important to understand that research design is a very holistic ecosystem which comprises of methods. It comprises of starting from the paradigm that you are working on, which particular research question that you are addressing, methods which you're using, analysis which you're using, and why. Because it has to be rooted through your research question, and research question has to be very interesting. It should create an impact. So everything is very interlinked. For example, there are a lot of brands. Even while I was teaching in London, Oatly is a brand which is of the oat milk. Now it wants to position themselves. So how do I position it? Maybe I position the brand within the vicinity of my manufacturing, but how do I position it outside? So, for example, how do I reach out to the Brazilian audience? Now, that is something which needs a lot of qualitative research. And one method, as I said at the beginning, doesn't work. So, you have to use multiple methods. It's not going to help in order to understand that. Similarly, when you are studying branding, now branding is something which is not centered around your products and services. It is centered around the kind of people that you're dealing with. So then in that case, you have to understand those markets, that consumption pattern. For instance, Apple. Everybody knows Apple. But the way Apple is being considered as a brand in America is very different from India. India, we consider it as affordable luxury. For them, it's not an affordable luxury. It's like a go-to brand, right? It's like a mass brand for them. Similarly, Starbucks. Starbucks is a classic example I can give you because Starbucks changed the entire, the store that they have in the US is very different. You just pick the coffee and go. It's like on the go coffee. But in China and India, we love to socialize, talk, and have a coffee. And coffee sometimes is considered to be something which you don't get at home because it is a tea drinking country, right? So you want to chill out with your friends, and now they've created a lot of points where you can do the selfie and put it on Instagram and all that. So it's a very different type of concept. So why I'm mentioning all that? Because these are nuances of markets, consumers, consumption of product. It's not a mere coffee for us. It's a status symbol. Oh, I went to Starbucks today. So this is something which comes from qualitative research, and you will be able to capture those insights and nuances only when your research design is strong, which is what we have mentioned in the book.
How does your case in point approach help bridge the gap between theory and practice for students and early career researchers?
Correct. So I always say, and I'm a strong believer of theory and practice doesn't work like in isolation. They work together. The reason is that as we talk, we actually did a lot of research where we were struggling to figure out, for example, one of the research which we did was with all the global professionals, like 64 of them, whom I interviewed, CEOs, CFO, all over the world. And we're trying to understand what is the role of AI into the customer journey. And everybody is saying customer-centric organization, but how does that help? How does that work? So while we were doing that, we developed a theory, right? So when you do a qualitative research, and we need a lot of new theories, this is what we promote as editors also, that, old theories doesn't work in today's world because we are living a very complicated, complex life. Look at our consumption pattern. I mean, if you assess ourselves as individuals, even, are we doing the same thing what we were doing pre-COVID, COVID, and then post-COVID, just with a glass of water or maybe a cup of tea or a coffee? I mean, these are certain points where we can think about ourselves. And of course, the answer would be no, because there were different stimulus that was affecting our consumption pattern. Of course, during COVID, everybody was scared and they were not having anything outside their house, and they were very cautious, and eventually people open up, but still people are very health conscious and they adhere to all those fitness kind of lifestyle and wellness programs. So the whole point is that theory comes through data. This is where qualitative research helps. And this is something which we say it's an inductive approach where you go to the sites. Now, interestingly, the sites are not the physical sites, but the digital sites. For instance, one of my students, very interesting example, and everybody gets excited about it. In India, there was a movie named as Control, right? Ananya Pandey. Now, she actually, that movie was all about how AI is taking control of the life. So, AI is on the dark side, AI is on the good side. Now, it depends on the individual, like us. How do I use the technology? Now, this is a very complex problem. I don't think it can be solved by one particular method. But the point which you asked about theory and practice is actually linked together in qualitative research. So if you use inductive approach where you go and do the studies, now in this particular case, it could be, online sites. It could be dating apps. One of my students, he is working on dating apps to understand the dating behavior of the people. Those are the sites, right? So the theories are developing from those sites. And then you have practical implication, because in business, whatever research we do, no matter how complex it is, so what question is always addressed. There has to be implications to the businesses. There has to be implications to the society, because we all understand the businesses are part of society and society is part of business. So you cannot just say that, oh, I just have implications to businesses. It doesn't work like that. So I think the theory and practice, it depends upon the individual. And that's why I always tell my students and all the scholars, and even I take a lot of faculty development workshops across the globe, which includes US, Europe, America, everywhere. So I tell them that, when you develop the approach, you need to go deeper into conceptualization and understand what is the problem that you're solving. How is the impact of the study? And if you go and do a deep dive into all of that, if you don't have the answer, then talk to the industry, talk to the people who are having those problems, and then develop your research question. It's not developed from industry reports and the literature outside. So I use a very different approach, and that leads to the development of theories which can be used practically by the industries as well. So this is very interesting, and I think we all should work together in order to develop new theories and help every stakeholder.
Professor Jain, my last two questions.
Mhm.
Exercise and examples are central to this book. How do these pedagogical elements enhance the learning experience for readers?
Correct. I think, as I was mentioning at the beginning, that, uh, even any concept that I teach, or if I, take a session on, I always focus on the life situations and the cases, right? For instance, how do I change the behavior of the voters, or instigate a kind of a stimulus? I don't know what it would be. It could be a content, it could be a video, it could be anything. But then that would work when you are talking about a particular voting behavior during the election time. So you can talk about pre-election, elections, and post-election. And that's very important to study the geopolitical scenario as well, because it has business implications. Tariffs, for instance, everybody's talking about that because it has got consumption implication, it has got business implications. Now, if I put all that, which is what our book is all about, it connects very well. It's relatable, right? When I say that, okay, let's talk about McDonald's. Everybody knows McDonald's in the world. When I talk about KFC, everybody knows about KFC. So when I'm generating a problem or an issue from a brand, from a business or society in a real time setting, it is very relatable. And people are able to learn, all the students, even in my classes and even in the book, it's very easy to relate them. And it is easy to use it because it's not a mere book. It's like, it gives you a step-by-step process. It makes the content relatable. You are able to relate with what is happening. And after that, you can actually execute it by yourself, depending upon the research areas that you want to work upon, depending upon the disciplines you are from. But honestly, in this today's world, in marketing, for instance, we use sociology, we use psychology, everything, because we use more of sociology and psychology. Sociology, why? Because when you come from a collectivistic country, then there are a lot of parameters that you have to imagine, that how, for instance, how decision making takes place. Now, we did some studies on wedding. Everybody is excited about wedding, but wedding is not easy. Okay, wedding is very complex decision making. Now, for that, you have to come up with different type of scenarios. You have to understand what people are talking about, how the decision making is happening. So those are real time examples which people connect. Students also connect, and they said, yes, this makes sense. So for instance, in one of the research which we listed in the book also, and we published a separate paper as well, where we found that the decision making is actually by the friends and the social media. Now ChatGPT gives us the diet plan, and we have seen that all over. Content is becoming viral. ChatGPT gives us the travel form, everything that you want. But are you using your mind? I don't know. That is something which people have to research upon. What is the impact on the society? If you have an AI companion, for instance, I was presenting this work and we presented these examples which are so relevant, right? If you have an AI companion, what are you doing with your real friends? Do you connect? I don't know. Look at gamers. Are they connecting with the real world, or they are in their own world? So where are we heading as a society? Do we want more AI companions, or we want human connect? I mean, I'm raising all this question, but it is so interesting to study and research upon, and it's not specific to a research a discipline. These are the questions which a social scientist like us would raise, and this is exactly the book offers, because you have to reflect, think, answer, and understand what is the research question that you want to answer and address, and create an impact.
Professor, my last question.
Correct.
Looking ahead, what trends do you foresee in qualitative research in the digital age? And how can this book prepare researchers for the future?
Correct. So I think, as I was mentioning, this is very important, because the future, if I have to talk to you, for the social scientists, one is definitely technology. Now it is AI. I don't know what would be next after AI, but technology is transforming all of us, right? Now, when I say technology, it could be AI, it could be something else. It could be mixed reality, virtual reality, or augmented reality. But the whole idea, as I was mentioning, was how do I use the technology? So the user is the human, right? So when the human is interacting with the technology, and that human is from India, or maybe from China, South Korea, Vietnam, or America, or Europe, any part of the world, the reaction would differ. So this is where the trends are lying. That, okay, I have an AI companion, but how a person from a collectivistic culture would react or behave or develop some attitudinal thing towards that AI companion. And definitely culture and social factors plays a very significant role in that behavioral pattern. Now, this is very important for all the societies, communities, and businesses to understand, because it's like a paradoxical situation. We don't want too much of tech, but we want human, and where it is heading, that is something which we will have to figure out. So that's one point. And this book offers all of those methods which can be used by the students, scholars, and researchers in order to address this important issues that we are struggling with. And in future also, we will have more complexities that we would be dealing with. The second area is very important again, which is sustainability. Because after COVID, what has happened is we are all talking about sustainability. And we also want to ensure that the carbon footprint reduces. Otherwise, we all know the repercussions, right? So you should not feel guilty while consuming a product or a service, but you should become happy. For instance, if you take an airline ticket, then you should look into the carbon footprint rather than only the price and the convenience part of it. So the disposing part is very important. And sustainable living, minimalistic kind of living, which is where the entire future is going to be, again goes back to qualitative research to understand that how these people would make it happen. It's not about talking points. Okay, I'm organic brand or sustainable. It's not about that. How do you ensure that it is happening in the society? How do you ensure that people are changing towards those sustainability and sustainable product consumption and all that? So that's the second area where this book would really help all the scholars across the disciplines in order to address these key issues which I listed. Now, the third area is, which is what I was talking about, the customer centricity, voter centricity, or human centricity, I would say. Technology, sustainability, and human centricity. When I say human centricity, that means we are all into the part of the society and we all believe that no matter how tech is going to do the advancements, including the US, Europe, all other parts of the world, but the human centricity has to be sacrosanct, because the human has to deal with the complex issues. And the technology is just a mere tool. I always say AI is a mere tool. It's not about AI is going to rule the human. So that is something which is everywhere discussed, because that is affecting the well-being of human cannot say that, okay, AI can't rule us. No ways. So that is something which is very important in today's world. And the fourth and the last area, which I would mention, is about how do I make the environment so blissful with the technology, human, and everything, so that the well being and happiness index is higher. Because what is happening eventually is that the stress is increasing at all the levels. AI has taken up a lot of jobs all over the world, and it is going to take more jobs. So, what people are going to do then? How you manage the wellness, well-being of the individual, the quality of life which we talk about, right? How do you manage that? How do I use technology? For instance, there are a lot of research. I would state the example of Mayo Clinic from Florida. And what they do is they use robotics and AI in order to predict that, okay, these are the diseases which could happen to you if you do not change your lifestyle. Now it's up to you. After 5 years, this is what is going to happen. Now, this is something which is very interesting. It is going to change my life. It is going to prevent me from getting the diseases. And all the more for the senior citizens. it is very much helpful because they are able to cure a lot of things while using the technology. This is exactly what I was talking about, the happiness index, the well-being of the people, and the mental stress that we go through. AI is not always right? It gives us a lot of, I would say formatted kind of content, which may or may not be relevant or relatable. Then in that case, human audit is needed. Now, that is something which is very important in this particular scenario. So there are four areas which I listed. One is technology, second is sustainability, third is about the wellness and happiness index, which I spoke about, and fourth is the human centricity, which should not go away.
Thank you,
That
Professor
this book
Varsha.
really
Yeah,
helps.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, Professor Varsha Jain, for joining us and sharing such thoughtful insights on qualitative research in digital era. Your expertise and contributions continue to inspire researchers and students across disciplines. We are grateful to have had you on the show and look forward to seeing how your work shapes future scholarship in this space. Thank you once again for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Yeah, bye.